Today we're going over the topic of the pros and cons of opening your third eye. So let's get started. We all heard about, a lot of people, for those who don't know, we're going to be going over what is your third eye. And your third eye is based on the chakra system. So for those who don't understand the chakra system, you have 7 chakras. You have your root chakra. Then you have your second chakra, which is your sexual chakra. Then you have your third chakra, which is your solar plexus. Your fourth chakra, your heart chakra. You have your throat chakra. Then you have your third eye chakra, which is in the middle of your forehead. And your 7th chakra floats above you. Your 7th chakra is you, your spiritual self, which operates this puppet called your physical body in this video game we call Life on Earth. That's the reason they keep saying that our reality doesn't exist. It's just a video game. But through the use of your avatar, which is your physical body, you can play this game. Okay. And we are here for a reason, to learn how to use our free will. So that's what that's all about. But so there's a lot of books that talk about your third eye and how to open it. And what does it mean that? Your third eye is your pineal gland. Okay. And your pineal gland, just like your eyeballs, has vision receptors. Now, your pineal gland is buried very deep in your brain. And why would it have light receptors on it if it's buried deep in your brain? Because there's different types of light. Okay. Our eyes are here to pick up visible light. And your eyes see between, for most people, between 400 and 700 wavelength of light is what we call the visible light spectrum. That is what most people see. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Now, there are other types of light. I have talked about before how spirit creatures have to be in the light, whatever light that is, 100 of every 1,000 years. And that is the light that they are denied access to if they are being bad. They are blocked access to the light. Why are we playing with all those things over there? Okay, so that is what Lisa's having fun. But anyway, okay, so this is what our pineal gland picks up, because not all light is visible light. There are other forms of light which is not visible. Okay. And this is why we get into our spiritual gifts, and some people can see beyond, and some people can sense shadows, and some people have intuition, and some people have all these, you get into your 6 senses or your 25 psychic abilities that we have talked about before. And this has to do with your pineal gland. So, some people believe that, this goes back very, very far. Before, the average person was meant to be closed, but you always had the priest or the shamans or whatever who could see this. And normally they had to use some kind of, device to be able to see beyond the physical. That's where you got into, as we discussed before, the use of peyote, the use of, LSD, hallucinogenics, spinning around in a circle, all kind of stuff. Because they was into what they used to do at the Oracle of Delphi. They would go down beneath in the temple and breathe in the gas that was leaking out from the temple. And then with the Oracle, she would start seeing visions. You understand? What Nostradamus was doing, he had his tripod. He had a tripod, and he had a bowl of mercury on the tripod, and he would sniff the mercury, which I would tell you that's not a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. Boy, will you see a lot of visions if you're doing that. But anyway, that was the secret of how he was able to see into the future. That's why they call it the Mad Hatter, because back in the old days, hat was made by putting mercury on the hat to make the hat hard. And that would make the hatters mad, because they was always dipping their hands in mercury all the time. And that's where the term the Mad Hatter come from. I'm not going to say Nostradamus was mad, but sniffing that mercury, he probably saw a lot of things. You understand what I'm saying? So we're not doing that today. Okay. I definitely don't advise that. But there's lots of ways to see beyond our physical world. Mm-hmm. But not everybody is interested in us seeing beyond our physical world. And a lot of people want to keep us close to the ground because there's something that most people do not know about. Your chakras, as I talked about before, are hooked together. And we're going to go over that very quickly. Like I said, your root chakra, your first chakra, your root chakra is what holds you down to the earth. It is connected to your sixth chakra. So, the more down the earth you are, the less spiritual you are. The more spiritual you are, the less grounded you are. What do that mean in English? You don't see priests or monks be yelling and screaming about soccer matches. You get what I'm saying? Because they could care less. They're into that spiritual world. Either you're into the spiritual world or are you into the physical world. Your second chakra, your sexual chakra, and your heart chakra is hooked together. So either you're into love or you're into sex. Most men are into sex, most women are into love, and there's a difference between those two, which I'm definitely not going over tonight. You can find out on your own. You get what I'm saying? Okay. Your third chakra, which is your solar plexus, and your throat chakra is hooked together. This is why when you get angry, you feel it in your stomach, because your stomach is the root of your emotions. And then your throat chakra is how you express yourself. And those two is very difficult to balance out. Because when people don't have those balanced, they feel a lot of things, but it won't come out. And some people, with their tongues are very loose. And that's what's wrong with people that hold a lot of things inside of them. You know, alcohol is a lubricant. And people that hold a lot of things, when they drink, it all comes out. Okay. So these are the things that are hooked together. So in our conversation today, the only one we're talking about is your first chakra and your sixth chakra. So either you can be spiritual or you can be grounded. You can't be both. And a lot of people do not want people to be spiritual today. They want people tied to the earth. And the first people to experiment with this, we always got to go back to the beginning. And we're going back to the Nazis. For some reason, the Nazis figured this out. The Nazis was the first people that started putting fluoride in water. They did not put fluoride in everybody's water. They only put fluoride in, if you lived in one of the ghettos, they fluoridated the water very heavily. In POW camps, they fluoridated the water. In the deaf camps, they fluoridated the water. But to the German people, no fluoride. Okay. Now, what was the deal with that? Okay. And then after the war, different nations started fluoridating their water. And America is one of the biggest countries that's into fluoridation. We love fluoridation in America. Okay. And what fluoridation does, besides for a lot of things of making your teeth harder, it also makes your bones harder. That's the reason when you get older, you have a lot more arthritis and things if you have that fluoridated water, because it makes your bones hard and brittle. Mm-hmm. But one of the things it do, it also encapsulates your pineal gland.
Yeah, someone was asking that question.
Okay.
Does fluoride really
calcify your pineal gland? It
yes.
does.
Okay.
And that is the reason why they do that.
Okay.
Okay. They don't give up about your teeth. They don't give up about bones. They want you to stay on the ground, because running a country, they don't care about how spiritual advanced you are and what's good for their fellow man. They don't want to be their brother's keeper. This is all about making money, running corporations, this and that, holiday season, this and that. They want people very close to the ground. And this was the job. This goes all the way back to Roman days. The job of a Roman governor was to keep the people entertained, because under Roman rule, times was extremely hard. taxes was very high. The Roman legions was very brutal. But you got free entertainment. You understand what I'm saying? Those was gladiators. You got horse races. You got this. You got that. They had live music. By keeping you entertained, you would forget about all those taxes, how they killed you, how they slaughtered your neighbor 2 weeks ago. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? You just seem to forget about those things. Okay. Because you are being entertained. Today this still goes on. This is why, even though a lot of people are upset and we're this and that, and people are mad over not having health care, taxes too high, the government being corrupt, blah 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 blah. But the Cowboys are playing this weekend. You know what I'm saying? And there's that soccer match on TV. And there's a basketball game. You know, the Lakers are playing. We can go on and on and on. This is why we keep people close to the ground. And then as the holiday seasons are constantly coming, you got, back in the good old days, you could not put a Christmas tree out until the day after Thanksgiving. Now, there are stores that's not even waiting until Halloween is over, and they're already putting the Christmas stuff up. Okay, they just want to keep you permanently in that state of mind. And you might think this is new. They was complaining about this in the Bible, because by the time Jesus was around, the Jews had so many festivals. Half the time, they didn't even know what they were celebrating. They were celebrating something, but they just had so many festivals. See, it's the thing of keeping people spending money. And the game they was playing back in Jesus' day is when you went to Jerusalem to attend the festivals, you couldn't use regular coins. You had to use shekels. The official currency was Roman coins. So you had to switch your Roman coins to shekels during the festival season. And they would play those little games in the exchange rate. That's why Jesus was kicking the money exchangers. See, this stuff is mentioned in the Bible, but no one ever explained this stuff. This is why Jesus was kicking the money exchangers out of the temple, because you had to exchange your money. And they wasn't exchanging it right. They was cheating you on those transactions. You're being cheated every day. You know that. Okay. Look at the price of gasoline. Yesterday I paid $2.05. Today it's $2.12. What's the difference between yesterday and today? I don't know. Why did I pay $2.05 yesterday and I paid $2.12 today? Who knows what I'll pay tomorrow? It's all over the place. And if I drive from one side of town to the other side of town, the price of gasoline, it can vary by 20 cents a gallon. It's a game. You get what I'm saying? There's so many things that's going on, and it keeps us dazed and confused at all times. They love it. Okay. Jesus wasn't having that. He kicked the money exchangers out of the temple, because the people are supposed to be there to praise God, not where they're being ripped off, exchanging their Roman coins into Jewish shekels. Okay. You get what I'm saying? And we're getting ripped off all the time, too. So it's the same thing. So back to our subject. We love these little side comments. This is where you get the juicy information. But anyway, back to our little comment. So by coating our pineal gland with fluoride, it keeps us. This is the reason the biggest church in the United States is what? No religion. The biggest religious stadiums in this country are called sports stadiums. Okay. You don't hear about millions of people going into a religious thing and attending church, but millions of people will go and stand for hours outside of a sports stadium, and that's their entire day. That's their entire weekend. And this stuff goes on continuously. It's Monday night football, Thursday night football, Sunday night football. Then you got on Saturday, you got the college games, and then you got hockey, you got basketball, oh my gosh, this stuff never gets tired. Okay. And if you live in a city like Houston, not only do you have all the sports teams, then you got all of your favorite singers are coming to town every week. You got all this other activity. The city's having all these festivals all over town. And when you look in the paper to see what you're going to do this weekend, you have your choice of 20 things that you want to attend all at one time. How do you have time to read the Bible? How do you have time to find out about anything? It's Christmas season. Who's thinking about nativity scenes and why Jesus? See, we're too busy. It's Black Friday sales, Christmas sales. We got this, and they just keep us dazed and confused at all times. This is why we don't get anywhere. Remember, I told you, we left the left-hand side of God as a speck of living energy. Our job is to go to every type of creation, every type of life, and return to Him as a spitting image of Him. That journey can take 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, as long as you're moving forward. They make sure we have no forward movement. Okay. And when you die, at the end of your life, the magic question is asked of you. Because God only gave you one thing, life. So at the end of your life, He asked you the magic question. I gave you 67 years of life. What did you do with it? And you want to talk about your credit score, how many kids you had, how many houses you own, how many pairs of shoes you had, how many dresses you bought, how many Dallas Cowboy games you attended. He don't give a. You had he only cared about one thing: mental progression, spiritual progression, and emotional progression. On all of those, you did nothing. You see what I'm saying? There was no movement. We are a cancer. That's the reason the Bible said God will put you in His mouth, and if you're neither hot nor cold, He will spit you out. Because if you're hot, He can judge you. If you're cold, He can judge you. If you're neither hot nor cold, you didn't do nothing. You can't go forward because you didn't graduate. He can't send you to hell because you didn't do nothing bad. You just vegetated for 67 years. It's all good. You know what I'm saying? It's all good, right? At least you own 15 cars in your lifetime and you buy a lot of jewelry and it's all good. Okay. But you're not getting anywhere. This is why they got to keep our pineal gland shut down. So there's a lot of things now talking about how to open your pineal gland, how to do this, how to decalcify it, how to do this. And you would think a person like Lynn David Lipsy would be jumping on top of that saying everybody should be doing this. We should be doing this immediately. But Lynn Lipsy's not going to tell you that. Because if you're going to do something, you have to be prepared. And the best example of this, which I like to tell people, is if you want to see what exists beyond our limited physical reality of 24-hour news, 24-hour you can watch movies all your life, sports all your life. We got 200 stations. We got all this stuff. If you want to see what is really going on, turn all the noise down. In Hinduism, they believe God is talking to you. He's omnipresent. He's talking to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The reason you can't hear Him is because you got all that shit going on. You need to turn everything off. And that's why when you turn everything off, you hear that humming sound. That's called the Om, or what they call it in England, the Who, the HU. But a lot of people say, I can't take silence. Gotta have some noise. If there's too quiet, I can't take it. I gotta have the TV on, I gotta have the radio on, I gotta have something. Because when it's too quiet, I don't like it. It's like I can hear myself thinking. What's wrong with hearing yourself thinking? Is that a crime? Are you going to go to jail for hearing yourself thinking? Okay. But you don't want to do that, right? Okay. So, since we've been in special ed, and since we've been for most of our life denied what exists beyond our limited reality, you can't do the pendulum swing, going from knowing nothing to knowing everything. And the perfect example of this is people who want to know. And they're told, hey, there's ways to fix that pineal gland problem. You can go to Peru and you can sip the tea, ayahuasca, and you will see everything. Same thing they tell you about DMT. You can take DMT and you can see everything. You can see ghosts, you can see spirits, you can see aliens, you can see the wind, you can see energy around everything that's alive. You see this, you see that. Oh, it's so wonderful, it's so fantastic. Let's talk about this. If you want to drink the tea in Peru, you got to go down there. You got to go to those shamans, and they're going to give you like a day or two spiritual course. And a lot of people don't want to take that spiritual course because they're Christian or this or that, or they don't believe in that thing, and those shamans talking all this BS and everything, and they're, okay, just give me the damn tea. I don't want to listen to all this junk, right? But the people that take the course don't have problems. The people that don't take the course, they're the ones who's yelling and screaming and hollering and running around like they're crazy. And why is that? Because in the course, they tell you when you drink the tea, you're going to experience things. Mm-hmm. You're going to see things. But these things, you just need to remain calm and still. These things are visions. They're not going to hurt you. They're just showing you things. And you just need to stay still and stay calm and balanced and see what is going on around you. So when you see it, you say, oh, that's what he was talking about. Oh, now I understand. You're not yelling. You're not screaming. You're not running around because they told you. The same thing if you want to go to the American Indians and do their sweat lodge. You got to take the course first. You get what I'm saying? They're going to take an hour or two and talk to you. Okay. About visions you might have and things you might. See, they have to prepare you. This is why people have problems when they read books like Necronomicon. Because people say those are devil books, and if you read those books, and people do have major problems reading books like the Demonic Bible, and there's a lot of books I have read, which some of these books have mentally scarred me for life, but most of them, the reason they mentally scar you and make people go crazy, because we've been brainwashed into thinking that everything is new today. And like with Necronomicon, when you read a book that was written in the year 700 by the Mad Arab, and he's talking about ghouls and goblins, he's talking about chupacabras, he's talking about no one knows where the gypsies come from, and they roam around in their colored wagons, you say, wait a minute, that's the same shit we talk about today. How come wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay. He talks about the same stuff. See, nothing has changed. When you read Sumerian texts, they're talking the same stuff that we're talking about today. But you was told you got that off of watching too much Star Trek, too much reading those science fiction books. It's like with Necronomicon. You look it up and you Google it, and they'll say, "Oh, that's by Lovecraft. That's from the 1920s. He invented all that stuff. These are fairy tale stories of the 1920s." Okay. And that fictional book of the 1920s, they discovered in the 1960s. And it was a real book. Okay, you know what I'm saying? See, a lot of things that are fiction are written as fiction because they don't want to tell you it's the truth. This is called, that's the reason I keep telling you it's secret society information. They hide the truth from you. This is what I've been telling you about all these superhero movies. All this stuff is secret society films. That's why they keep showing us all this stuff about Star Wars and whatever. Star Wars is about the war in heaven, which is mentioned in the Bible. They are going over it in the movie, but they're flipping it over. We was told about how, there's the good side and the bad side. But when they retold that story in Star Wars, the good side is the government forces. The bad side is the rebels. And the rebels is the good people now. And the government forces are the bad people. See, the devil's not a liar. He's a deceiver. He just flipped it over. And in Star Wars, the rebels just kicks the government ass constantly. And we're clapping for the rebels all the time because the rebels are the good people. And we live on a rebel-held planet. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, we're rooting for the home team. But then we go to church on Sunday and we pray for God's will to be done and as is on earth as it is in heaven. But how can that be when we're rooting for the home team? And the home team is the rebel team. See, it's all about deceit and confusion. So, if you want to declassify your pineal gland, I'm not going to tell you it's a bad thing, but you are not prepared.
You have to be very careful.
You need to be careful because, okay, another analogy that I like to use about declassifying your pineal gland. A lot of people have been to the ocean and went down to the beach a dozen times, 100 times, and they say, Lynn, I've been in that water all the time. I don't see what's the big deal.
There's no sharks.
There's no sharks. I don't see no fish in there. I don't see nothing. You get what I'm saying? And I'm out there having fun, and I don't see why people are afraid to get in the water. There ain't nothing out there. I never seen anything because your eyes cannot see in the water. You are blind. When you open your eyes in that water, you see nothing. Let somebody give you a pair of goggles, and you go out there. And you're like, I had no idea. You mean there was fish swimming around me all the time? There was barracudas and sharks. You mean there's stingrays out there? And there's jellyfish? And oh my gosh. And I was as bad as the rest of them. When I first moved to Texas along the coast, I used to be out there with the surface, the water up to here. And I would see those long, big shadows go past me. I thought those was just clouds. I didn't know there was. And now,
Stingray.
some of those clouds was 10, 12, 15 feet long that would go by me. Who knows what that was? And I would be out there early in the morning. That's called being fish bait. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. And they would have said, boy, that car been parked out there for 3-4 days now. I wonder what happened to that guy. Okay. Maybe they would find an arm and a leg a few days later, but see, this stuff really happens. Okay, because we can't see in the water. And you can go in the water all the time, and people say, well, as long as you don't get deep water, it's safe. People been bitten by sharks in 3 feet of water. Okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't get in the water. I'm just using that as an example. You don't know what's out there because you can't see. We are living, we was told so many lies. We was told that all of existence, all of creation, exist within the visible light spectrum between the wavelength of 400 and 700 wavelength of light. That's a total lie. That's the same lie they told us about the ocean, that all life exists in the top 500 feet of ocean and below 500 feet is a vast desert. We believed that up until 1947 when a French guy built a submarine and went 6,000 feet deep in the ocean and there was things swimming everywhere. Okay. And we was like, but how can life exist without light? Okay. How can life exist underneath with all these pressures? And if you was to ask, and if we could talk to the fish down there, we would say, how can you live down here with all that pressure? What pressure? I don't see no pressure. It's called home. If you go to Alaska and you ask the people, how can you live up here when it's 20, 30 below zero? What you mean is home. How can you live in the Sahara Desert when it's 120 degrees in the shade? What you mean is home. See, home is what you're used to. That's why in South Texas, where I live, the temperature today dropped to almost 40 degrees. We almost froze to death down here. We was freezing. We had our jackets, our coats on, our gloves on, everything, because it got down to almost 40 degrees. I almost froze to death. Okay. And I used to live in Ohio. It went way below 40 in Ohio. Okay. You get what I'm saying, don't you? But I have changed. I can't even imagine if it got to be 10 below here. I would just fall over dead. Okay. I just can't take and even at 40 degrees, my bones are hurting. I'm stiff. I'm sore. I got to take an aspirin. Okay. You get what I'm saying, don't you? Oh my gosh. This is craziness. See, it's what your body is used to. And I ask those who are Canadians all the time, how do you live in Canada when it's 30 below zero? Well, it's home. You got to do what you got to do. Okay. So this is the problem. So if you are interested in seeing what is beyond our reality, you need to move slow. And just like if you want to learn how to do anything, you need instruction. Now, back in the good old days, if you wanted to be, I'm just using it as an example. If you wanted to be a high priestess or wanted to learn how to do everything, you had to be an apprentice and work under somebody for 20 years and whatever. Okay. Today, you just go online for 20 minutes, read 2 or 3 things, and you're done. You're finished. You get what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. That doesn't work. If you want to be a doctor, you can't go online for 20, 30 minutes and say, okay, I looked it up on Google, and I'm a nurse now. Okay. I looked it up on Google. I'm an engineer now. I can design buildings. Okay. You can't do that. If you want to do it, you need instruction. You need help. Okay. Now, for me to say that, I did it on my own, but I cheated. Remember, I've told you, I got those voices in my head and things like that, but most people don't have that ability. You need help. So let's talk about what is beyond our reality, since I said that, okay, to give you an idea of what lies out there. Just like if you've been going down to this beach for 20, 30 years, and they give you a pair of goggles, and now you're scared because now in that water is everything swimming around, and you just never seen it because you couldn't see. It's not like the fish wasn't there before. And you have to have what the Bible called discernment. If you can't tell the difference between a shark and a dolphin, you're going to run into a lot of trouble. You can't tell the difference between a pike and a barracuda. Okay, you're going to run into some problems, right? Okay. Because some things bite and some things don't, right? And you got to know the difference. If you can't tell the difference between a guard snake and a rattlesnake, you're going to have some problems, right? Okay. You just need to know. Are we doing good? Do we got any questions?
We're good. We're answering one.
So this is what is going on. So let's talk about what exists beyond our reality that they don't want us to see. As I told you before, there are 2 giant universes out there. There is the ultraviolet universe. This thing is massive. Okay. There's also the infrared universe. The ultraviolet universe is where these beings of light comes from. We like them because they're nice and cute and pretty, and they glow. Okay. You also have the ultraviolet universe. This is where these dark creatures come from. It's just like in reality, as above, as below. We call things at the top of the ocean, we eat them. But things at the bottom of the ocean we call sea monsters. They're not really monsters. They just look kind of weird and ugly. You get what I'm saying, don't you? But in reality, you can be eaten by the cute stuff at the top of the ocean, or you can be eaten by the ugly stuff at the bottom of the ocean. It's up to you. Okay. But there is no monsters out there. There's just creatures living in the ocean. We're making that interpretation that the things on the top are pretty and the things at the bottom is monsters, right? So we have the creatures of light in the ultraviolet universe. We have these dark creatures in the infrared universe. These two universes overlap. And where they overlap is called the visible light spectrum. That is where we live, in that little space between these two universes. Okay. And so the analogy is we are the crabs on the beach. The crabs see a lot of weird stuff because the beach is not of the land, is not of the sea. It's the intersection between the land and the sea. And the crabs cannot understand their world and their reality because on the beach there's very little food, and the beach gets visited by a lot of very weird things they don't understand. You got horses, you got dogs, you got people, you got all this stuff. They don't live on the beach. They don't know where they come from and where they go in the whole 9 yards, and they come and they leave. And then on the beach, you end up with dead fish and dead whales and dead this, and they don't understand where that's coming from either. You see what I'm saying? They can't understand their world because their world is an intersection of two separate worlds. And even if they could try to, in a million years, figure out their world, then you got the hard part. You got these things that come from the air, grab a crab and go back up in the air. That's called third space. These are these things in the Urantia book they talk about that live between the spaces that we now have a name for. We now call it hyperspace and all this. So we know nothing about hyperspace. We're only trying to figure out the reality of the ultraviolet and the infrared. Even they have a hard time dealing with these creatures that live in between the spaces or live in hyperspace or live in whatever. That's just super weird stuff. But these are the stuff which visits our world. So when your eyes get open and when you get into these spiritual things and people that do all this meditation work and they learn to see beyond our reality, they start seeing these creatures of light. And there's lots of them. It's not just one or two different types. It's a whole universe of creatures. And on the other side, especially if you get into ghost work or you get into all kind of stuff, or when you get into demonic work, you start seeing some of that stuff from the ultraviolet. Then that stuff is really weird. That stuff is really strange. Okay. It's super strange. Super, super strange. Okay. And then you got these beings from third space. These jellyfish creatures that got all these tentacles, what they call sky jellies and everything. And this stuff, oh my gosh, this is really strange. Okay, so we're just being visited by everything. But how big are these universes? See, the reason why I talk in analogies is because this stuff is beyond my mental capability. So, when you read, I talk in analogies. And when you read about this in a book, they talk about an analogy. Because you can't explain something if you don't have words. So let me explain what is the problem. If you took a person from the Amazon rainforest and you brought him to New York City for the weekend and let him walk around, and then you took him back to the Amazon and people would ask him, what did you see? What could he tell them? He don't have words.
I don't know.
What could he tell them? And we did this to the American Indians. This is how we ended with the Indian Wars. We got tired of fighting the Indians. The Indian Wars was never ending. Okay. So in the early 1900s, we gathered all the great Indian chiefs out west. We put them on an iron horse, a train, and we took them all the way to Washington, D.C. And they toured the Capitol. They talked to Congress. They met the president. They never seen nothing like that. And when they went back to their land, no more Indian wars. They didn't want a piece of that anymore. See, they thought they was fighting those guys in that wooden fort over there. They had no idea This is what they do to us. That's why you hear people that say they was taken to this alien planet and they was seeing things that are hundreds of years more advanced than what we have. And when you come back, you ain't touching that. You're done. No more Indian wars after that. The Indians was done. It's not a thing of we can raise an army and get some braves. And they like, no. That's not going to work. No, it's not going to work. Okay. They were shown the other side. Okay. This is the problem we have. So, in the analogy, how big is these universes? The analogy is that the ultraviolet universe, it would be all the lands west of the Mississippi River. The ultraviolet universe would be all the land east of the Mississippi River. And where we live is the Mississippi River, which is a broad river. It's a mile wide in some spaces. But on a map, it just shows as a plain black line. And we live our whole existence in that little black line between those two spaces. That's terrible. And how big is hyperspace? Hyperspace is all the ocean that surrounds America. And we want to get into, that's the reason we talk about jumping and all this stuff. When we get into that, we really going to run into some stuff we don't understand. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Okay. This is how big space is. Space is of proportions we can't even imagine. And we have to try to figure out and comprehend this stuff. And we have problems because it's just mind-blowing to us that because we keep saying to ourselves, we're here all alone, there's no one else here. But now we know. See, as our technology keeps getting greater, now we know that we have discovered water on other planets. We know that almost every star has things going around it called planets. We know that we have now found over 2,000 planets outside of our solar system now. We have discovered at least 100 planets which we believe are habitable. Okay. We don't have the technology to go out there, even because the closest one we have found so far is a mere 2 light years away from us. That means if you travel at the speed of light for 2 years, you would get there. But at the speed of our space travel today, it would take us 1 million years to get there. You see what I'm saying? Remember, when people used to, we saw those cowboy movies about them on the wagon trains. They would leave St. Louis to go to California. It would take them 2 months to go from St. Louis, Missouri to California. It took 2 months. You need to talk to these truck drivers today, and they'll tell you how many hours they can go from Kansas City to LA. Okay. It doesn't take them 2 months. Okay. Now, has the land got any smaller? No. The technology has changed. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Okay, Melinda has a question.
Yes.
Are creatures all around us invisible?
Just like in the ocean. There are some fish that are translucent. There are some fish that we can or cannot see because they live above and below us. So if you're in the ocean, see, the problem is on the land. When you do Google search and you say you're on a certain position, you're going to see what's on that position. The problem with the ocean is 3-dimensional. So you could be on a certain point in the ocean and there's nothing there, but 50 feet below you, there's something there. 500 feet below you, there's something there. 1.5 miles below you, there's something there. And to you, there's nothing there. You understand what I'm saying? But the problem with us is our eyesight. we can only see between 400 and 700. The reason why kids have invisible friends and have all this other stuff, because as you get older, your vision narrows. So some kids can see 350, some kids can see 750. That's the reason kids can see things. And then you keep slapping them over the back of the head and they learn what is acceptable and not acceptable. But kids can see. You understand? Also, cats can see in the ultraviolet. Most people do not know that cats do not see our world. See, we thought everything in our world see the world as we do. Most people do not know cats do not see color. Cats almost live in a black and white world. But cats can see in the ultraviolet spectrum. Did you know that? We now have cameras that can see in the ultraviolet spectrum. Cats can see in the ultraviolet. Okay. So cats can see a lot of things that we cannot see.
They can see spirits, ghosts.
Right. And when you look at plants and things in the ultraviolet, they look totally different than they do in visible light. And when you look at things in the ultraviolet, they look totally different. And let me freak you out real quick. This is what scientists can't understand. If you look up at the stars in space, and you take a picture in visible light, and then you take a picture in ultraviolet light, and you take a picture in infrared light, and you take a picture in gamma rays, and you take a picture in this. When you put the pictures on top of each other, they don't line up. Some things are only visible in one wavelength and not in the other wavelength. What in the hell is that all about? Now, that's what you say, that some things are visible and some things not invisible. It's only visible in one wavelength and not in another wavelength. Why is that? We don't have an answer for that. You get what I'm talking about? So just because it's not in a wavelength of light we can see, does that mean it doesn't exist? And now that we have cameras that can see this, when we put the pictures together, it doesn't line up. That is very scary. And they even have a name for this, because what NASA found out by testing some of these cameras on the Earth before we put them in space, when they was testing these cameras, they could see things moving. And when they don't look through the camera, they don't see nothing moving. And when they look through the camera, they see things moving. This is the problem. I want to really scare you real quick, since you're supposed to be having a drink after this thing. See, this is why the best ghost photography was when cameras first came out. When film came out around the turn of the century, it was uncoded. Film today is coded to see between 400 and 700. When film first came out, it was uncoded. It could see everything. And the problem they was having in 1899, 1900, that they would take a picture of a person sitting in a chair. And when they developed that picture, there was something else behind the chair. You get what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. That was a major problem. And some of the best paranormal pictures ever taken is at the turn of the century. But this was also a problem when video cameras first came out. When the first video cameras came out, video cameras have what is called a hot shoe over the sensor that limits the camera to see between 400 and 700. When video cameras first came out, they did not have a hot shoe on them. And this was a complaint that when video cameras first came out, you could hold a video camera and you could see things in the camera that you could not see without the camera. That was very scary. And they recalled a lot of those cameras. Okay. Because you don't need to see that. And the same example of that is with night goggles. If you look at the stars at night with the naked eye, you don't see nothing moving. If you take a pair of night vision goggles and you stare at the stars, you will see things moving up there. What's up with that? You know what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. Very scary. Okay. Why are they moving? Why are things moving? And how come when you're not looking through the camera, nothing is moving? Very scary indeed. Any other questions?
No, we're good.
So, if you want to play this game, if you want to know what exists, if you want to know, besides, you say, okay, Lynn, I'm ready. I'm tired of just playing in the 3 feet of water at the beach. I want to know what exists in the ocean. You can find out. But you need to go slow, because you didn't know about sharks, you didn't know about whales, you didn't know about this, you didn't know about a lot of stuff, and you was thinking all fish in the ocean, whether I got this fish here with this, there's fish in the ocean which is 20, 30 feet long. Okay, there's all kind of stuff. Okay, and you've been out there in your little tiny, John boat, floating around, drinking a beer, and because you knew you was safe. After you know half the stuff that's swimming around out there, now you're afraid to take your John boat out anymore. You get what I'm saying, don't you? Okay, because ignorance is bliss. So if you want to do this, you need assistance. What they call in Spanish ayúdame. You need help. And you need to get somebody to help you. And that's the reason people who want to see a glimpse of this world, they're making, and there's even filters and things. What I found out in my research, there's filters when I was looking, because I have camera equipment that can take pictures of certain things. Do you know there's certain filters you cannot buy because they're for use for police only, or for use for law enforcement only, because they have camera filters that can pick up dried blood, that can see fingerprints on money. They got stuff that can see all kind of stuff, okay? There's even filters that can see ghosts and spirits, okay? But they don't want the public to have that. You don't need any of that stuff. Remember, Christmas is in 2 to 3 weeks. You just need to stay focused on that. You don't need to know about this other stuff. See what I'm saying? And this is why they can catch people, because when you get counterfeit money, they can read fingerprints off of money. They got all kind of stuff. You don't need to know. So just like so if you want a glimpse of this world, that's why if you want to drink the tea, you take the course. Okay. And they prepare you.
Someone was asking, Beverly, I think was asking, have you drank the tea and have you taken the course?
No, I have not taken I have seen things, because as I said, there are dozens of ways of doing this. So you can do this, like for example, what is the most popular thing today is hallucinogenics, which is, most people in America who wants to do this, they're not doing the tea because you can't bring ayahuasca into the United States. I met a lady several years ago that got in trouble on the border trying to sneak ayahuasca into the country. Okay, that's considered a controlled substance. Okay, so in America, people are doing their DMT and their magic mushrooms and all this other stuff. All over the world, there's certain things people can use. As I told you, you don't even need drugs. In Turkey, they spin around to do this. There's books that talk about all kind of ways. There are ways you can use stones that can open your mind. And when you get into some of these super weird stones like motivite and all kind of stuff, you will start seeing things. And there's some stones that I'm not going to tell you about because you might want to go about. See, it's not that it's forbidden. You just need to work with somebody. That's why I don't sell these items. When people start coming to me and like, do you have Lorimar, and do you have this, and do you have Motivite, and do you have Sujilite, and do you have this? The first question I ask them is, why are you looking for that rock? Mm-hmm. Well, I heard it's very powerful and I want to get, okay. That's the same thing if a person walk in a place and say, I'm looking for a power saw, I'm looking for a power drill, I'm looking for a motorized, jackhammer. Why are you looking for a motorized jackhammer? Well, I heard it's very powerful. I want to see one. Okay. If you don't have a need for it, you should not go there. Okay. So, when people are asking me about these weird stones, I ask them the magic word. Why are you looking for that rock? And what you going to do with it? Mm-hmm. And if they give me a good explanation, And we have that conversation. If I can't get it, I tell them where they can buy the stone. You get what I'm saying? But there's a lot of weird stuff out there. Okay. And you can do it with rocks, you can do it with herbs, you can do it all kind of ways. But you need to prepare yourself. With sweat lodges, they don't use any chemicals, nothing. They're using just, or just the Hindu way. By doing meditation and all of that stuff, they're doing it that way. So there's lots of different ways. So don't think you have to do the tea. Expanding your mind is something that you need to do when you're ready. But you need to be working with someone on that project. And you need to have a purpose of why you're trying to expand your mind, not just because you want to do it, because we're out of time. But in closing, the problem with all this stuff, opening the box is easy. How do you get it back in the box once you take it out? And once you open the box and now you can see ghosts and spirits and you can see shadows and you can do this stuff is fantastic. I love it. Now you want to turn it off. Mm-hmm. How do you turn it off once you turn it on? Okay. You wanted to see ghosts and shadows because you wanted to see if it was real or not. And now you can't sleep at night because you're saying ghosts and shadows. Okay. That's deep there. That's really deep.